Well, loyal viewers and new viewers alike, welcome to this Season 10 champion interview. If you do not already know who the champion is, and you would like to find out the fun way by watching the games, please go do that now. This is your last chance. Spoiler warning, after this, no more surprises. So, with that out of the way, hey everybody, how you doing? Chris Moriarty Marks, commissioner of this W&W Pokemon Draft League, with our Season 10 champion, Caleb, the Seagull goalie of the West Texas Wingles. Caleb, how you doing?
We're doing good. Happy to be here. This is the first that we get to do this championship interview. I think this is a fun way to do this. Kind of recap everything and excited to do this. Excited to be here. I love the graphic that you made with that West Texas blue in the background. Though. Looks good.
Or something. So, to start things off, how does it feel to get that 4th star up there
Man,
on the logo?
it feels really good. I mean, obviously, winning any championship feels really good. But number 4, this is a little bit different. Like kind of a special situation here. But probably the toughest playoff run I think I've had, at least in recent memory, because we're taking down the #1 team in the league, the Chapeau Aluches in the finals. That was a super close finals that we played. Then we had to overcome you in the semifinals when we played because you had cleaned my clock all season long. Uh, and so getting that, and then we had RNG basically be the decider going from round one. And so it was a tough model. It was a tough way to get there. Number 4 is kind of cool just because nobody's gotten the 4. So I mean, Pat Moan back there, I guess. But
Nobody's
that's
gotten
just
to 3 yet other than you, but hey.
well, that's fair. But with now that we have 8 teams, it's tough to win. And it being the second time going back to back, I think was a lot of fun, just because it's tough to win. And who doesn't like to win? Who doesn't like to get first? So yeah, that's my initial thoughts. It just feels good.
Me, apparently, but. So,
Sorry, I rambled there, but I mean that's just
oh no,
that's all.
you're fine. You're fine. You're fine. So, the first champion of Generation 9, is that something special to you? Is that,
Well,
nice fun, or just part of the gig?
it was a lot of fun. I wanted to be the first champion of Generation 8, but we knew how that fell, losing to the Evergrande Evies with Alex Lamb as the head coach there. So getting to be the first champion for Generation 9s, I think, is a lot of fun. It's really cool because nobody knows what's going on in this new generation. We both are figuring this out. No one knows how Terra types are going to work. We don't even know if we have our tier list correct. So playing that and seeing how that goes, it's just everybody's on such an even playing field. So it just makes this one a little bit sweeter just because we're all figuring it out as we go and just happen to get lucky to catch some breaks to get this championship. So
Yeah, so talking about everybody coming in on a bit of an even playing field, everybody got to come in together
yeah.
on this draft with the new generation. Nobody's really sure what's going to be. Uh, how confident were you when you walked away on draft night? Like
Uh,
all the Pokemon are picked, teams are locked in basically. Walk at that point, how did you feel about the team?
Draft night was terrible. I mean, we know that. You were there when rounds was it round? Yeah, round 4. Round 4 is where the chaos ensued. So round 4, round 5, round 6, and I think round 7 all went as bad as possible. Just because we lost our redirection with Pachirisu, we had this Armarouge in the first round that we picked that we really kind of wanted to be Arcanine, but we took Armarouge, so we really wanted Indeedee female that gets snagged in the 4th round, so we don't have that, and so we are scrambling through that period, just trying to figure out what the heck do we do to give ourselves a chance here. And man, if y'all watch that video, I mean, you just got to scrub to like the first like somewhere in the 30-minute mark, and you're gonna see the panic because it's bad. Uh, it was bad. I don't know about you, but I mean, draft night's always stressful, right?
No, I love it. I seem to have pretty sustainable luck with executing the draft plan, but that did not seem to be the case for you. I
No,
believe the quote we had earlier was you got put in the dryer on tumble dry cycle or something
yeah,
and
that's
tossed
exact.
around.
exactly how it felt. I mean, it
Uh,
was just one hit after another. The fourth round, we had my entire board got wiped with my my tier threes and tier two. Like I thought, oh, this is such a good sleeper pick. No, everybody knew about this. So yeah, we didn't. I guess we didn't have the best draft plan on draft night because it seemed like from the get go we were scrambling. The biggest takeaway from draft, though, I think, was the fact that we were able to get some good trades. We were able to trade for Ndidi female, using Ndidi male and like our like eighth and ninth picks, if eighth and ninth round picks to Chapel Hill. Uh, and so that they were okay with that. So we gave up some picks. We also didn't know what we wanted at the time, so moving back in the draft felt really good. Um, the other big trade, and I think a lot of people knew about this, was we picked Palafin in round 4, and we traded it away to the Memphis Machamps, who had already a loaded team at that point with Annihilate and uh, I think they had Worthworm and a few other good Pokemon like that. So they got the Palafin, and but we took the Quaquable from them is what we used with the fifth round pick, something like that. We picked up Quaquable with their draft pick, as well as we picked up a future draft pick in this upcoming season 11 draft. And so drafts was all over the place, but the trades, well, I think was the make or break moment for the team because without the trades, we don't make this run 100%. Or if we it's just way harder. At least that's my initial takeaway from it. And even with the trades, you still swept my team twice. So that's a big thing there. So
yeah. So talking about having a roughed draft night,
uh,
do you think that was the toughest obstacle you faced this season, or was it something else that really felt like the big hurdle you had to get past to to
uh,
make this season happen?
yeah, no, that's I mean, tough question. I mean, toughest obstacle is a tough question, but draft night was really hard to bounce back from, just because a lot went wrong, but we also came away with some stuff that gave us something to feel good about. But we didn't know how to use Arm Rouge and DD together at the time. We've seen it on YouTube and things like that, but I've never piloted that, and so not knowing how that worked, that's a tough obstacle. We had a lot of pieces on our team that not overly familiar with, like Quavel, no experience with at all. We did get the Dragapult, which I was happy with. So Dragapult was like the one familiar top end piece that we had, because we didn't even get to use DD the previous Generation 8 seasons. Um, but realistically, I think the toughest obstacle, we talked about this like lightly back and forth a little bit, was actually getting our first win against your team. Uh, because first time we played, there was a 2-0 sweep in your favor. Gyarados gets to like plus 1,000 attack or something like that because the Dragon Dance Moxie boost. It was a nightmare. And then the playoff series was a hack off, I guess. And then our week 10 matchup, our playoffs position was kind of locked, but still wanted to get that win just to say, hey, we could do it. And we never got it. And so when we got matched up in the semifinals, I don't know about you, but when you've lost to somebody twice and you have to play them in the playoffs, usually doesn't that's not the matchup that you want, especially in the situations that I lost to you in. So
Yeah, well, and to kind of discuss a little bit more about the context for that, walking back through the regular season, you've already discussed that the Toronto Trick Rumors were the only team to actually sweep you,
yeah,
and
they did
so
good.
that's 4 losses out of your total 6 losses that you had out of your 23 games.
That's
Uh,
pretty good.
yeah, that sounds like a solid win rate. So having this confusion walking out of draft day and things like that, but being able to deliver on such a solid season, kind of connect that for me if you could. How did it feel trying to make that happen, and what are some of the things that you think helped make it happen?
How to make that how that felt is one, if you drop 6 games in regular season, you honestly think you should have the number one seed. We did not have the number one seed going into the playoffs. That belonged to the Chapo Aluchis, who had a much more dominant season than we did. They were, we played them early before they got their roster figured out, so we did get a win on them, which was great. But they're non-divisional opponent, and they also were like destroying everybody. It felt like their team was so good with King Gambit and Corviknight going on from tier 2. They had Ditto that was popping off, going crazy. And so that team obviously was the best team in the league with the number one seed. I think they only lost 5 total games. So, how we got there, how we felt about it is I think a lot of it, and I don't know about you, when you're new generation, I think you kind of got to go back to your basics and like what you were doing in Generation 8 to kind of get a feel and like, okay, look at our team build. This is what we have. We're not familiar with Terra types. So let's just try to build a cohesive team that just looks good on paper and hope for the best. We used a lot of generic EV sets, especially in the early game, early part of the season. We didn't really get specialized until the playoffs. And that was my approach. I know you have a different approach on that. I'm kind of curious, kind of how you viewed going into this season on a team building aspect, or just how you did it.
Yeah, for me, I think I made one of the more critical drafting mistakes where it just seemed like picking a lot of versatile, good offensive options was the go-to, and I think walking away on draft day or at the end of draft night, I had a lot more defensive options than a lot of teams did, and I think those will be good going forward. But I think what you and what the Chapel Hill Haluchas highlighted was that just having versatile, good offensive options to just make the games be high tempo and force it to be whoever makes the first mistake is automatically on the back foot. I think that was one of the big things. And, talking about that high tempo play style, getting things off, you had two standouts in the regular season that made it to the divisional all-star team, one of which is one of those high tempo pieces in Kilowattrel. The other one being the Armorug that ended the season with the highest KOs in the league, joining the 20 plus club. Talk to me about those two in particular and what those meant on your team.
Well, Kilowattrel was a little bit different to use, a little harder to use than I thought it would be. Um, Mainly because you have like competitive, which like great, that's really good if they're going to be lowering your stats, but not a lot of people were using Intimidate or like using like Eerie Impulse or Parting Shot because like we only had Parting Shot really on the Morgrim and Grimmsnarl line, like Incineroar is not here. And so you're not seeing a lot of people pivot that way. Plus, new generation, like competitive did not feel good early on in the season. And so you had wind power, and then I think you had Volt Absorb. And so Volt Absorb, we didn't have a whole lot of electric weakness coming our way. At least that's how I felt. And so we're using a lot of wind power. So early on, Kilowatt was just get that tailwind up, so we got speed control, and that was kind of his job. Just focus sash, tailwind, thunderbolt, air slash, protect, more or less. So that's how Kilowatt was used. And I think Kilowatt's value came into play going into the playoffs, just because we started pivoting away from that setup piece and using it more like as a fast offensive threat, where we started using Terra Blast. Like Terra Fairy Kilowatt was something that I leaned into heavily when you and I played our playoff series, and that was because I needed more offense, and that was a little uncharted territory. But later in the season, we had to use Kilowatt more offensively, and I think that was a help going into the playoffs. But Kilowatt was definitely harder to use. Is definitely my favorite regional bird now. One of my favorite Pokemon. So I like that electric flying type there. Um, but to touch on the other one, Armorug, that one was a little easier, I think, just because we had the psychic terrain, so expanding force kind of comes into play. So that's kind of helpful. And then yeah, and flash fire. So if we get Terra into like Terra grass, like that was always really simple. So Armor's not as dynamic. We tried using supportive sets; they were terrible. We taunted in game one of our first series when I tried to use supportive Armor. So never really got to see the wide guard, Willow Whips kind of sets and stuff like that. So yeah, it was really good for being the offensive carry that it needed to be, because we had to put so many resources into making it good, because a lot of our results hinged on how well that Pokemon performed.
And to just throw one more hat into that to that ring there, there's one Pokemon that definitely had some overperforming moments that all
Yes.
happen to conveniently be in playoffs for you.
Yeah.
Were you expecting Stantler to do what it did in playoffs? Were you just like holding back on that, saving it for playoffs? Is that just a thing that just happened? Happy little accidents? Or what was the deal with Stantler?
The body slam paraprox were happy little accidents. We'll say that. Uh, Sandler was not expected to do as well as it did. It was out there to kind of be our tier four, like a placeholder, because we had all of our power in our team, basically tiers, tier three, tier ones, a tier two, tier three, and then like the tier four is there because we have to have it. Otherwise, we have an illegal team. And so Stantler coming in and being really bulky with Eviolite was like a really big takeaway for us. It got us a lot more bulk, lived a lot more hits than it was supposed to. And then utilizing the Intimidate actually really came out to be very beneficial, as well as screens. And I think having that screen setter that's a little bit slower but not too slow definitely helped with our survivability, because later in the season that started becoming an issue, not being able to live all the hits to win a game. And so I think that's something that I noticed going from playoffs from the regular season is everything was so aggressive in the regular season that you needed something to kind of outlast your opponent into playoffs. I mean, that was my impression. I'm not sure if you felt the same way, where it's more like an outlast and then just bully them down with HP bars, but that's how I felt.
Yeah, I can definitely see that approach being taken versus your team a lot. I clearly took a very different approach to our games.
Yeah,
Of
you did.
hey,
You
hey,
just
are you gonna
melted the
stop me
team.
dragon dancing or not?
Yeah.
No, I can just push this button a bunch.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Not even
have fun with these
punished.
earthquakes then.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It was not
When you
good.
just get to hit dragon dance 3 times and neither of your Pokemon get touched, you're doing okay.
Yeah, it's
But
brutal.
yeah, no, I especially with the way a lot of the other teams were drafted, it makes sense that people were just kind of trying to outlast, and as long as you had the longer standing HP bar, that gave you a good chance to win. But talking about that transition to playoffs, discussing Stantler kind of already took us the direction.
Yeah.
Let's just kind of take a walk back through the playoff run, which unfortunately we have to start with the
Yeah.
elephant in the room. Initially, losing that quarterfinal matchup to the Memphis Machamps because they brought an illegal team, though. You offered the remake, and they said, haha, no, you're just going to put safety goggles on, and I lose. So instead, going to the metronome mode to give Memphis their fair chance and winning out that way, how did that affect the feeling of progressing and eventually winning the title, knowing that you initially lost out on that?
I guess first things first is it takes the pressure off, because you're basically running on an extra life here, and so not having that additional pressure that we've already lost. Like at this point, we're just getting to play extra Pokemon, and it's a lot of fun, and you just want to put your best foot forward. That was my initial mentality going into it. And I think most people would probably agree. Extra Pokemon. This is the playoffs. I get to play at least one more series with this set of 13, because I don't know about you, but I get attached to these guys, especially when we've had them for multiple months. And I guess the other thing is I really kind of beat myself up on this. It's like, why did I not put safety goggles on one of my Pokemon in the matchup to begin with? Because the first time we played them, that's what we did. And I honestly over-indexed thinking that Memphis is going to go back and look at that game, say, hey, we don't have, would they use safety goggles on Crocodile? Crocodile went crazy, and it ended up being a pretty safe win for us that way, just because it nullified everything Vivillon, the stupid Gen 6 butterfly, did. And so I didn't really think it was going to show up. And something that, we talked a little bit about that playoff matchup, you and and I don't know, but I counted it out too early. I think you might have probably thought that was a mistake. I kind of want your brief thoughts on if I over indexed on that win there to begin with. I don't know if you have a quick thought on that or not.
Having been in the prep room, I know that we discussed it, and there was sort of a contingency plan, but I think one thing that really slipped by was the compound eyes, making it a bigger problem. Really just expecting that friend guard. I think that was probably the over index of like, oh, if it does show, it's going to have friend guard. We just have to, there's no way that that's going to stick for 3 games, but getting that extra 10% accuracy really changes those rolls for how often those sleep powders are going to hit. And so it probably was better to just keep goggles on. But
especially because we
with
used
that,
life orb. So,
yep,
and life orb damage wasn't that much
and then
better.
yep. But you did progress after that, and you got to go visit Toronto,
Yeah.
and it was, as stated earlier, a bit of an RNG festival, but overall, it seemed like a pretty comfortable 3-1 TTR, switching up to a defensive Gyarados strategy, not really panning out. The Dragonite being dealt with pretty capable by that Kilowattrel. Any big takeaways from your side in that 3-1
Well,
semifinal match?
you said it was a comfy 3-1. That was not a comfy 3-1. Because we had, I think, at least 2 to 3 Pokemon paralyzed on my side every single game, and so there was always a chance for a move to fail, especially when it was like a 1v2 or a 1v1 where it's like Armarouge staring down a Gyarados. Gyarados may not have like a ton of offensive investment, but a Waterfall is still super effective if I didn't Terra the Armarouge. So that makes a big difference. And so I think just because that RNG being a factor, it's just unpredictable. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't like unpredictable sets because you can't account for what each turn's gonna really look at, and you don't know your speed tiers get all sorted out, just out, they're all out of sorts, and it makes it. I wouldn't say it kind of puts you on the back foot, I guess, but it it just messes with your whole rhythm. That's and I think you're kind of the same way. When you start getting paralyzed, you got confusion going on. It messes with your rhythm, and rhythm's probably the most important thing. Rhythm and flow is the most important thing of how these series go. At least that's how I've always thought, and it's been that way I think since the very first season back in Generation 8.
Yeah, well, to hone in on some flow, taking a look at the final itself, getting off with a pretty good start, good flow, getting up to
Yeah,
0, and then John figured something out.
he showed
Brought it
Brick
back
Break.
2-2. Yep, brought it back to 2-2, and it came down to Game 5. Talk to me a little bit about that series, and in particular, what it was like going into Game 5 there, knowing you had won the first two and let the next two go.
Going up 2-0 felt fantastic. I know we had some body slam paraprocs, which kind of helped speed tiers in our favor. Moody also was going kind of all over the place on the Chapel Hill side, so the Scovillain wasn't as spooky as it got in games 3 and 4, and also game 5. So that was kind of really beneficial. So a two game lead felt really good. So we got to game 3. It's like, hey, what we've been doing using Stantler as a lead, where we have Frisk, not Intimidate. So if he has Defiant, we're not giving him a +1 on King Gambit or anything like that. So having the screens with Stantler felt really good. We had an Armarouge that could set up using Calm Mind, and that basically made it to where any of his special threats were not threats anymore, and it was also accounted for Ditto, which never showed up. And so that 2-0 lead looked great. And we had the Stantler and Armarouge just popping off, doing what they needed to do. And then we see Brick Break. And so Brick Break one shot Stantler, breaks all the screens, and the snowball for Chapel Hill starts immediately from that point. And so you're on the back foot going into game 4 now because it's 2 games to 1. But you at least have a game to figure out a strategy going into game 5. And so we tried to play around doing some different stuff with like getting Dragapult more involved. Uh, I think we used Indeedee a little bit more. And Kilowattrel was there, but Kilowattrel wasn't doing as much as we wanted to, so we kind of pivoted back to using Donphan. And so having that in game 4, it came up close, but Scovillain got really good boosts. And we realized Scovillain's kind of a problem, but with how his team was set up, we couldn't go immediately after Scovillain because we had Hatterene and we had King Gambit here that were very big problems. And so going in game 5, I don't know about you, but game 5s are nerve wracking no matter what. But the mentality was that we've played a really good season up to this point. We had the free series pass in the first round, and so like if we don't pull it off in game 5, one, this is the best team that played in the league. They're playing exceptional, and two, like I'm happy with how this season has gone. Would love to win it here. but we're just gonna settle down. We're gonna play Pokemon. We're not gonna have to bring Stantler, and we're not bringing Kilowashel. So we know the 4 Pokemon that we're bringing. Let's just get them in the right spots to put us in the best chance to win this. And so we got our NDD, we had our Armarook, we had Donphan, and we also had the Dragapult. And so, looking at it, it got really stressful just because we got in some really interesting predicaments. Scovillain was boosting up, but we were getting really big KOs. And we got to a point in the end game, and I've rewatched this game a few times, where we had Armaroog and Dragapult. Dragapult's Terra Fire, so Scovillain is not doing much damage with Giga Drain at this point. And thankfully, only got up to like 97%, which is a big deal going into our last turn. But the problem was we could have just started throwing expanding forces out there while we still had psychic terrain up. But it was nerve wracking because if that ended, we weren't going to be able to survive any hits from King Gambit that was left in the game. And so that's really stressful. And, having that, we saw the celebration. It's like, oh, yes, we did it, when we got the double KO with Armaroog at the end. And so, uh, yeah, it was a really big payoff. It was like a huge, relief pulling off the double KO to finish it in game 5. But it was a really well fought battle. And so regardless of outcome there, I think it was going to be it's just going to be a positive scenario. So
Love to hear it. So, with all of that being said, we've now kind of taken a walk back through your whole season in a manner of speaking.
yeah, I've talked a lot. I
You
feel like I've
had
just been running on and on and on and on and on. So
Yeah, that's fine. That's what we're here for. This is your interview. But you had the 2 series with John that both went the distance, right? Maximum number of games played versus Chapel Hill that you could have this season.
yeah,
And you had the TTR series where it was not very close during the regular season, and you really had to flip the switch to get it into the postseason. A couple other teams threw up some good challenges in the regular season. What do you feel like was your toughest matchup of this past season, and why?
oh, uh, oh man, that's tough. Uh, Shoot. Obviously, getting over our hurdle was a big one. Uh, and it was tough to play against you all season long. But I mean, we got some history back and forth. Like we can kind of guess a little bit how each other's going to play. Chapel Hill had a really scary team, but we only played those 2 times, and so like the history wasn't there, so it was really unfamiliar. But I believe you've had trouble with this team in the past. We're talking about the Memphis Machamps, man. That team in the regular season looked really like we did really good against them. But that team had Annihilate and Palafin, which I gave them Palafin, which was really stupid in hindsight. But those 2 Pokemon there and a Scizor, like those 3 were they were so hard to deal with. And honestly, that's what, screwed me up in the playoffs, tripped me up in the playoffs when we first played before we realized this is the legal team. And like I was even debating like, do I even like try to take the advance? Because I got pretty well beat up in that series because it was not close. It was a pretty convincing beatdown on their side. And that team is so scary because it has so much damage threat. Like Memphis was like, after you factor in the playoff series, like that was probably the toughest matchup week in, week out, always having to prepare for them. And you've had to play that team twice in the regular season too. Like, is that kind of your takeaway from them?
Oh yeah, no, I lost the first time I played them, and well deserved. They cooked me, and so having to play them that second time, it was very much like I need to win this for the mental war. Going into playoffs, if I've got to play these guys, I want to be coming in on even footing. Because if they've stopped me twice, I really don't know what I'm going to do because I will have tried 2 very different things to have won those. And luckily, we were able to pick up the win the second time. But it is just so horrifying looking at all those top end options and being like, well, if this one thing does this one thing, that's a huge wrinkle no matter what I bring. So
And Rage Fist was so much of a damage boost, and we got to see a lot of bulk up leftovers on the annihilate. That thing was just so much damage all the time, and I don't. It's just that team was ridiculous. Um, like I think we both picked it to be the dark horse to win the whole thing, and I honestly think they really had a good shot to do it. So, uh, yeah.
Well, we've been rambling on for a bit at this point. So to kind of round us out, why don't you give me your closing thoughts on season 10 and make a bold prediction for us for season 11?
Well, first off, closing thoughts on season 10. It was a really fun season to play. Uh, we figured it all out. We played a whole thing on Showdown, so made it really easy to team build. I think going forward, team building on for season 11 is going to be a little bit tougher because I think all of us were playing around with how terror types looked, and so it's going to be interesting seeing how we balance that moving forward. But it was a fun season. I guarantee I don't think people are going to trade with me anymore. I love to make trades, but after that, and then getting those two trades and going and somehow winning this season, I think no one's going to trade with me again, and I'm a little sad about that. But maybe I can get a good enough offer to pull some strings and get something good for everybody involved. Um, yeah, so season 10 was a lot of fun. It basically should be what I should summarize that to. But going forward in season 11, and you may disagree with me completely on this, and I'm kind of want to get your thoughts here too, is season 11 being the second season we have here. The Charlotte Charizards, the Memphis Machamps, and Queen City all played really good with what the pieces that they had. They all had their definite burst within the season. I honestly would not be surprised if in season 11 one of those finally take home their first trophy. And just because there are new, they've been our expansion teams, but they don't play like expansion teams anymore. They've been around doing this for at least 4 seasons apiece, and they're all getting very good at this game. That's the fun part about our league is everybody's so good, or at least for our skill level. We may not be good compared to other people, but that's fun.
Yeah. No, I buy into it. It honestly feels like there's no favorable matchups anymore.
Yeah,
You know, you get to playoffs and you're like, I guess I kind of want this team just because how our Pokemon match up a little bit, but you're never like, oh, thank God I pulled this guy, or ooh, I was really hoping to get this opponent
yeah.
because
Maybe
of the coach.
yeah. A long time ago,
Absolutely not.
like season 5 when we had Zambia and we had Charlotte when they were first brand new, like they were still figuring it out. I'm like, yeah, of course, that's we're helping them along, and they've gotten to the point where they beat us pretty consistently. And so, anytime we can get wins against anybody, it's a big deal. And so, I think that's the fun part. And moving forward in season 11, like those three guys, they're gonna it's bound to happen, right? And I think season 11 we're gonna start seeing it happen because I've got win number 4. Everybody's gonna be like, this guy needs to get knocked down a peg or two, and so I'm gonna get everybody's best shot. And guess what? Probably, you know, I'm not gonna get to stay at the top, and that's why we do this. We play through and get bragging rights, and that's the fun part.
That is the fun part. Well, I think that is going to do it for us. Congratulations once again, Caleb, on win number 4 and the season 10 championship. We are all looking forward to season 11, and we hope that y'all will join us as it happens.
Yeah,
Everybody
yeah.
have a good day, night, whatever it may be, and we'll catch y'all in the next one.
We'll catch you on the next one. Thanks again, Chris. This was a lot of fun. So.